Admiral Frank Moore stood at the viewport, watching stars streak by as the diplomatic vessel accelerated away from Galactic Hub Station. His weathered face reflected in the glass, lines deepening around his eyes. 6 months of negotiations wasted. 6 months of false promises and diplomatic double-talk. "Admiral, we've cleared the outer defense perimeter," his communications officer reported. "No pursuit detected." Moore nodded silently. He hadn't expected pursuit. The Galactic Council was too arrogant for that. They thought humans would crawl back, desperate for acceptance among the older spacefaring races. The door to the bridge slid open, and Susan Wallace entered. Earth's chief diplomat looked exhausted, her normally impeccable suit wrinkled from the hasty departure. Her eyes, however, burned with quiet fury. The evidence was right in front of them, she said, joining Moore at the viewport. Shipping manifests, weapons transfers, intelligence reports, all proving the Council has been arming the Krell for months. Moore's jaw tightened. The same Krell who destroyed our colony on New Eden. 3,000 civilian deaths. Speaker Jovac called our evidence human paranoia and fabricated data, Susan said, her voice bitter. Then had the audacity to suggest we were the ones violating the preliminary peace accords. The Admiral turned from the viewport. Around him, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. They were all veterans of the Krell conflict. They all knew what was at stake. "Captain Harris, status of the fleet?" Moore asked. A stocky man at the tactical station looked up. "All 7 vessels reporting in, sir. Formation is holding." The Dauntless reports minor issues with their engine cooling systems, but nothing critical. "Good. Once we reach the jump point, set course for Earth." Susan moved closer, lowering her voice. "Frank, the President needs to know everything. The Council faction leaders, the secret meetings, especially what we learned about Chancellor Dorn." Moore nodded grimly. The intelligence they'd gathered painted a disturbing picture. High Chancellor Dorn, leader of the dominant Vextari faction, had been meeting privately with Krell emissaries for months. The peace talks had been nothing but a distraction. "Lieutenant Garcia, prepare a secure transmission to Earth Fleet Command," Moore ordered. "Priority Alpha. Full encryption." "Yes, sir," the young communications officer replied, fingers dancing across her console. Susan walked to the center of the bridge. "I truly believe some of them wanted peace. Ambassador Krila seemed sincere." "The Melvari have always been more reasonable," Moore agreed. "But they're outnumbered in the Council. Dorn's faction controls too many votes." The ship's AI announced, "Approaching jump point in 3 minutes." Moore took his command chair, feeling the weight of their decision. Walking out of the peace talks wasn't just a diplomatic statement. It was a gamble with humanity's future. "Secure channel established, sir," Lieutenant Garcia reported. "On screen," Moore ordered. The main view screen lit up with the Earth Fleet insignia before switching to the stern face of Fleet Admiral Clark. "Admiral Moore," Clark greeted him. "The President is waiting for your report. Did the Council accept our terms?" Moore exchanged a glance with Susan before answering. "No, sir. We've withdrawn from negotiations. Ambassador Wallace discovered evidence that the Council has been secretly arming the Krell against us." Clark's expression darkened. "You're certain?" Susan stepped forward. "Absolutely certain, Admiral. Council logs, shipping manifests, recorded conversations, all verified by our intelligence team." Moore continued, "We presented our evidence to the full Council. They denied everything and accused us of fabricating the data." "I see," Clark said after a moment of heavy silence. "Return to Earth immediately for debriefing. The President will want options on his desk." The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent again. As the ships approached the jump point, Moore sent one final message to Galactic Hub Station. "To the Galactic Council. Humanity withdraws from these hollow negotiations. When you're ready for honest dialogue, you know where to find us." The human fleet vanished into the jump point, leaving behind a stunned Galactic Council that had just made the biggest mistake in its 1,000-year history. The council chambers erupted into chaos the moment the human delegation departed. The massive circular hall, with its soaring crystal dome, and hundreds of alien representatives, filled with angry shouts and accusations. Silence. Speaker Jovac's voice boomed through the chamber, the tall, blue-skinned alien's forearms raised in a gesture demanding order. Gradually, the noise subsided. "The humans have chosen isolation," Jovac announced. "This merely confirms what many have long suspected. They are not ready for galactic society." Ambassador Krila rose from her seat. The small, delicate Meldari had been the strongest advocate for human inclusion in the council. "We drove them away," she said, her voice gentle but carrying to every corner of the chamber. "They presented evidence of weapons shipments to the Krell, evidence we dismissed without proper investigation." High Chancellor Dorn stepped onto the speaking platform. The massive Vexteri's scaled skin gleamed under the chamber lights. His faction controlled nearly 60% of council votes. "The humans exaggerate," Dorn said dismissively. "Yes, there have been legitimate trade agreements with the Krell Empire, but nothing that violates our neutrality stance." Meanwhile, in a maintenance corridor 3 levels below the council chambers, Intelligence Officer Lisa Grant carefully adjusted her service uniform. To any passing alien, she appeared to be a standard hub maintenance worker. None would suspect she was one of Earth's most effective undercover operatives. Lisa slipped into a small utility room and quickly removed a panel from the wall. Behind it sat a compact quantum transmitter. She pulled a data crystal from her pocket and inserted it into the device. "Eagle to Nest," she whispered, transmitting council response to withdrawal. "Chancellor Dorn is pushing for economic sanctions against human worlds. Meldari faction opposing but lacks votes." Back in the council chamber, the debate grew heated. "I propose immediate sanctions," Dorn proclaimed. "Restrict all trade with human worlds. They must learn there are consequences for insulting this council." Creel's voice rose in protest. "Sanctions will only confirm their suspicions. We should establish a fact-finding commission to investigate their claims." The voting proceeded rapidly. Dorn's faction easily secured the majority needed. By nightfall, sanctions against all human territories would take effect. As representatives filed out of the chamber, Jovac approached Dorn in a quiet alcove. "The humans' departure is convenient," the speaker said quietly, "but their intelligence networks are extensive. If they discover the full extent of our arrangement with the Krell..." Dorn waved a dismissive hand. "Impossible. The details are known only to a handful of us. Besides, without council membership, who would believe them?" Jovac looked unconvinced. "They presented substantial evidence today, evidence that should not have existed." "A security leak I intend to find and eliminate," Dorn replied coldly. 3 levels below, Lisa completed her transmission and replaced the wall panel. Her next message would need to wait. Security patrols had increased dramatically since the human delegation's departure. As she stepped back into the corridor, her communicator vibrated with an emergency alert from her trade contacts. Multiple supply ships along the Rigel corridor had failed to make scheduled arrivals. 3 merchant vessels reported unusual scanner readings near the Krell border. That night, the council celebrated what they considered a diplomatic victory. Glasses were raised to a stronger, more unified Galactic Council. Only Ambassador Krila abstained, watching the festivities with worried eyes. In her private quarters, she received a disturbing report. Long-range sensors had detected large fleet movements in Krell space. When she attempted to share this information with Defense Command, her message was mysteriously delayed in the system. At the celebration, High Chancellor Dorn smiled as he accepted congratulations from his allies. None noticed the small communication device that briefly flashed in his palm, nor the message that appeared there. Phase 1 complete. Fleet preparations on schedule. 3 weeks passed after the failed peace talks. The morning alarms aboard the battleship U.S. Defiant blared without warning. Captain Alan Rivers rushed to the bridge, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "Report." he demanded, taking his command chair. Lieutenant Wendy Foster swiveled from her communication station. Sir, we're receiving multiple distress signals across all frequencies. Council outposts along the Rigel corridor are under attack. Show me, Rivers ordered. The main view screen filled with tactical data. Red indicators spread across the star map like a virus, marking fallen outposts and stations. The Krell Empire had launched a massive offensive against Council worlds. The Krell hit 17 locations simultaneously, said Commander Greg Bell, the tactical officer. Council forces were completely unprepared. Outposts are falling within hours. Rivers studied the data grimly. Any attacks against human territories? No, sir. They're specifically targeting Council worlds. Rivers opened a secure channel to Earth Fleet Command. Admiral Jane Wilson's face appeared on screen. Captain Rivers, she acknowledged. I assume you're seeing the same reports we are. Yes, Admiral. The Krell have launched a major offensive against the Council. How should we respond? Admiral Wilson's expression remained neutral. We've received an emergency meeting request from Earth's military command. President Warren is conferring with his advisors now. In the White House Situation Room, President Jack Warren studied the holographic display showing the rapidly advancing Krell forces. Around the table sat his top military and diplomatic advisors. The Council is requesting immediate assistance, Defense Secretary Paul Martinez reported. Their border fleets have been overwhelmed. The same Council that refused to acknowledge they were arming the Krell against us, asked Vice President Linda Ross. The same Council that imposed sanctions on our worlds 3 weeks ago. Warren rubbed his temples. What's our military assessment? The Krell have developed new shielding technology that renders Council weapons nearly useless, explained General Drew Howard. Their ships are falling at an alarming rate. At current pace, the Krell will reach core Council worlds within 2 weeks. And our own defenses? Warren asked. Solid. Our shield modifications after the New Eden attack would still be effective against Krell weapons. We could intervene. Warren stood and walked to the window, looking out at the White House gardens. The decision weighed heavily on him. What happens if we do nothing? He asked quietly. Secretary Martinez answered. The Council will likely fall. Millions, possibly billions of lives will be lost. And the Krell will become the dominant power in this sector of the galaxy, added General Howard. Eventually, they'll turn their attention to us. Warren turned back to face his advisors. Deploy our fleet to defensive positions only. Secure our borders and prepare to accept refugees, but do not engage unless human territories are threatened. Sir, Martinez said carefully, are you certain? This could be viewed as what? Returning the same consideration they showed us. Warren's voice hardened. The Council ignored our warnings. They armed our enemies. Now they face the consequences of their actions. Back aboard the U.S. Defiant, Captain Rivers received his new orders. As he read them, another emergency transmission came through. The face of Council Speaker Joe Vac appeared on screen, his blue skin now pale with stress. This is an urgent appeal to all Allied forces. The Krell have bypassed our primary defenses. We request immediate military assistance under Galactic Convention Article 7. Rivers looked at the desperate alien face, then down at his orders. After a moment, he signaled Lieutenant Foster. Send the standard response, he said quietly. Foster hesitated only briefly before typing the message. Message received. Earth forces are maintaining current defensive positions as per sovereign security protocols. As the message transmitted, Rivers watched another red indicator appear on the tactical display. Another Council world had fallen. The Krell advance continued unabated, while humanity watched from a distance, protected by the very defenses the Council had once mocked as paranoid and excessive. The consequences of the failed peace talks were now written in fire across the stars. Commander Diane Powell stood at the observation deck of Frontier Station Alpha, watching the endless stream of refugee ships approach human space. The Krell advance had reached the Arcturus sector, Home to several critical Council worlds, what had begun as a military defeat was now becoming a humanitarian disaster. Commander, latest count shows over 3 million refugees in the approach corridor, reported Lieutenant Sam Hayes. Most vessels are overcrowded and running low on life support. Powell pressed her palm against the cool glass. Beyond the safety of human borders, faint flashes of light marked distant battles. The Council was losing, badly. "How many can we process today?" she asked. "Maybe 10,000, ma'am. We're stretched thin already." Powell nodded slowly. Each day brought impossible choices. Earth had agreed to accept refugees, but resources were limited. Medical facilities were overwhelmed, and temporary housing covered vast areas of the lunar surface. Her communicator chimed. "Powell here. Commander, we have a Council diplomatic vessel requesting priority docking," said the station's security chief. "They're carrying wounded and several high-ranking officials." "Clear them for immediate docking," Powell ordered. "I'll meet them personally." As Powell made her way to the docking bay, she received the latest intelligence briefing on her tablet. The Council military had suffered catastrophic defeats, losing over half their fleet in just 1 month. The vaunted 7th Defense Squadron, once considered the most powerful force in the sector, had been completely destroyed at the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The Council diplomatic ship looked barely spaceworthy as it limped into the docking bay. Its hull was scorched from weapons fire, and emergency patches covered multiple breach points. When the airlock opened, Powell was shocked by the condition of the passengers. Council officials who once wore elaborate ceremonial garments now appeared in tattered clothes, many bearing untreated wounds. Ambassador Krila emerged first, supporting an injured aide. When she saw Powell, relief washed over her face. "Commander Powell, thank you for receiving us," she said. "We bring urgent news for your government." "Medical teams are standing by, Ambassador," Powell replied. "Once everyone is treated, we can arrange transport to Earth." As the refugees were processed, Powell met with Krila in a private conference room. "The Krell weapons," Krila explained, her voice shaking. "They're specifically designed to counter our shield frequencies. It's as if they knew exactly how our defenses work. Almost like someone gave them that information," Powell said quietly. Krila's large eyes fixed on Powell. "I was wrong to stay silent when your delegation presented their evidence. Many of us were blinded by pride." On Earth, General Henry Martinez reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. Human deep space sensors had detected Krell forces moving toward the Sirius Gateway, the fastest route to Earth if they decided to expand their conquest. "Show me the current refugee situation," he ordered his staff. A holographic display appeared, showing thousands of ships clustered at human border stations. Over 20 million refugees had fled so far, with millions more expected. "Sir," his aide said, "President Warren is asking for your assessment." Martinez studied the tactical display. "The Krell aren't just defeating the Council, they're systematically destroying them. These aren't random attacks. They're executing a carefully planned extermination." When the first official Council delegation arrived at Luna Command later that day, they came not as proud representatives of a superior civilization, but as desperate survivors seeking salvation. In the observation lounge, Commander Powell watched as more refugee ships arrived, their navigation lights forming rivers of desperate hope flowing toward human space. "We should have helped sooner," whispered one of her officers. Powell shook her head. "They wouldn't have accepted our help until now. Sometimes people have to lose almost everything before they recognize who their real friends are." As she spoke, another Council world went dark on the monitoring screens. The turning tide had become a flood, and the Galactic Council was drowning. General Henry Martinez walked with measured steps into Luna Command's grand conference room. Behind him, Earth was visible through the massive windows, a blue jewel against the blackness of space. 10 Council representatives had arrived for emergency talks, their once proud demeanor replaced by barely concealed desperation. "Welcome to Luna Command," Martinez said. I'm authorized to discuss terms of potential Earth intervention in the current conflict. The lead council representative, a tall Vexteri named Jack Savor, stepped forward. We appreciate Earth's willingness to meet. The situation has become critical. Martinez gestured to the large oval table. Please, be seated. Ambassador Nicole Foster will be joining us shortly to outline Earth's position. As they took their seats, Martinez activated the room's holographic display. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, with red areas showing Krell-controlled space. Nearly half the former Council territories glowed crimson. Ambassador Foster entered the room. Her expression was serious but not unkind as she took her place at the head of the table. Distinguished representatives, she began, before we discuss military intervention, I must be clear about Earth's terms. We require full membership in a reformed Galactic Council, complete technology sharing, and reparations for the economic damage caused by your sanctions. Jack Savor's scaled skin flushed dark with anger. This is extortion. You would exploit our crisis for political gain. Foster remained calm. This is negotiation from a position of reality. You armed our enemies. You dismissed our evidence. You imposed punitive sanctions when we withdrew from talks. Now you face extinction and require our help. A smaller representative, a Meldari named Tiv, spoke softly. While regrettable, the past cannot be changed. Millions die each day. Is this the time for such demands? It is precisely the time, Foster replied. Because now you might actually listen. The double doors opened, and Secretary of Defense William Parker entered. Without preamble, he activated his data tablet, projecting intercepted Krell communications into the air above the table. This is a Krell battle plan we intercepted yesterday, Parker explained. It details not just military strategy, but post-victory plans. The Krell aren't interested in conquering Council worlds. They intend to eliminate all Council species entirely. Silence fell over the room as the representatives viewed the evidence. The Krell documents detailed sterilization procedures for captured planets and genetic compatibility tests for potential slave races. Most Council species were marked for complete extermination. Earth forces could be mobilized within 72 hours, Martinez said into the silence. Captain Ben Lawson and the U.S. Valiant Battle Group are ready to lead the counteroffensive. Jack Savor's anger had faded, replaced by a more pragmatic calculation. What exactly would full membership entail? Equal voting rights, unrestricted access to Council records, and joint military command during this crisis, Foster responded. Additionally, a full investigation into who provided the Krell with Council defense specifications. The Council representatives exchanged glances. Finally, Ambassador Tiv spoke. The Meldari support these terms. Survival must take precedence over pride. One by one, the other representatives reluctantly agreed. Only Jack Savor hesitated. The Vexteri have led the Council for 3 centuries, he said stiffly. To accept these terms would fundamentally alter the balance of power. The alternative is having no power at all, Parker pointed out bluntly. The Krell don't seem interested in preserving your political traditions. Finally, Jack Savor nodded. We accept Earth's terms. Foster slid a data tablet across the table. Then let's make it official. As the agreement was signed, Martinez received an urgent message on his communicator. Captain Lawson was requesting immediate deployment orders. Krell forces had been detected approaching the refugee corridors. It seems we'll be testing our new alliance sooner than expected, Martinez said. The U.S. Valiant will need support from any remaining Council vessels. For the first time, a hint of hope appeared in the aliens' eyes. Earth's formidable fleet, once viewed with suspicion and fear, now represented their last chance for survival. Perhaps, Ambassador Tiv said quietly, this tragedy might forge a stronger galaxy than we had before. Foster's expression remained reserved but determined. That depends entirely on whether we all learn the right lessons from it. The combined Human Council fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the new Centauri system. 53 ships in tight formation, their hulls gleaming against the backdrop of stars. At their center, the massive U.S. Valiant led the charge, its weapon systems fully powered. "All ships reporting ready, Captain," announced Lieutenant Roy Edwards from the tactical station. Captain Ben Lawson nodded, his eyes fixed on the main view screen. Ahead lay a Krell occupation force, 30 warships holding position around a captured Council colony world. For 3 months, the people of New Centauri had suffered under Krell rule. "Open channel to all ships," Lawson ordered. "Operation Spearhead is now active. Primary objective: liberation of New Centauri. Secondary objective: capture of Krell command vessels for intelligence gathering." The fleet accelerated forward, splitting into 3 attack wings as practiced. The Krell responded slowly, seemingly surprised by the coordinated assault. "They didn't expect us to work together," observed Commander Zetlon, the Council liaison officer assigned to the Valiant. Krell intelligence indicated Council and human forces were incompatible. "They were right. Until recently," Lawson replied with a grim smile. "Fire main batteries. Target their flagship." The Valiant's forward cannons unleashed devastation, the specially modified beams punching through Krell shields that had previously repelled Council weapons. 3 more human vessels joined the barrage, and the Krell flagship's shields collapsed. In orbit above New Centauri, Major Karen Hughes led the drop troops from the assault carrier Liberty. 120 soldiers in advanced combat armor plummeted toward the planet's surface, targeting the Krell ground headquarters. "Remember your training," Hughes said over the tactical channel. "The civilians are our priority. Many are wounded and malnourished. Secure the population centers first." As Hughes' troops hit the ground, they immediately demonstrated why human soldiers were feared throughout the galaxy. Their adaptive tactics and willingness to sacrifice for their objectives caught the Krell completely off guard. "Building secure," called Sergeant Pete Wilson. "We've got about 300 civilians here, many needing medical attention." Hughes directed her medics forward while continuing the advance. Within hours, they had secured the main settlement and were pushing the Krell back into the wilderness. In space, the battle reached its climax. The Krell formation had broken, their ships attempting to retreat. 7 had already been disabled, with 3 captured intact. "Council vessels are performing well," reported Lieutenant Edwards. "They've adapted to our targeting protocols faster than expected." On the bridge of the Council cruiser Eternal Light, Commander Vecnar watched in amazement as human ships deliberately placed themselves between Krell weapons and damaged Council vessels. "They're protecting us," he said to his second officer. "Taking hits meant for our ships." The second officer nodded slowly. "I was at Proxima when the Krell destroyed our defense fleet. We begged the humans for help then, and they refused. Now they risk their lives for us." "Perhaps they needed to see we could be trusted," Vecnar replied. As the last Krell ships fled the system, a cheer erupted across the human Council fleet. The liberation of New Centauri marked their first major victory. More importantly, it proved the alliance could work. On the planet's surface, Major Hughes coordinated with local leaders to distribute emergency supplies. The civilians, many of different Council species, initially feared the human soldiers. But as they witnessed humans providing medical care to injured aliens and sharing their rations with hungry children, perceptions began to change. An elderly Meldari approached Hughes, her frail hand reaching out in the traditional greeting of her people. "The Krell told us humans were savages who cared only for themselves," she said. "We believed them because the Council had said similar things." Hughes accepted the greeting. "People often fear what they don't understand." Admiral Moore's voice came through on all channels as the operation concluded. "New Centauri secure. Prepare for Phase 2. The Krell wanted us divided. Today, we showed them the power of standing together." As transport ships began landing with medical supplies and food, human and Council soldiers worked side by side. Former enemies now united against a common threat. The tide was beginning to turn. The Grand Assembly Hall of New Earth Station buzzed with activity as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the treaty signing. 6 months had passed since Operation Spearhead began. 6 months of hard-fought victories that pushed the Krell back to their original borders. After the decisive Battle of Krell Prime, where Admiral Moore's innovative tactics had broken the back of the Krell military, the once fearsome empire had sued for peace. Ambassador Nicole Foster stood at the center of the hall, reviewing the final draft of the Galactic Charter. Around her, human and alien diplomats mingled freely, a sight unimaginable just 1 year earlier. "Quite a change from our last diplomatic gathering," Admiral Moore said as he approached. Foster smiled. "From walking out of peace talks to rewriting the Galactic Order, history takes strange paths." The Admiral gestured toward a group of Council representatives. "Have they accepted all the terms?" "Yes." The investigation committee confirmed what we suspected. High Chancellor Dorn and several other Council leaders had been secretly dealing with the Krell for years. They provided defense specifications in exchange for territory promises. And Dorn, facing justice before a mixed human council tribunal, Foster replied, along with his co-conspirators. A soft chime announced the ceremony's beginning. The vast crowd moved toward their seats as Council Speaker Zovak and President Warren took their positions at the central table. Captain Ben Lawson and his alien counterpart, Commander Vrel, carried the treaty document forward. Both officers bore the scars of battle, Lawson's face marked by a burn from the Battle of Arcturus Gate, Vrel missing an arm from the fighting on New Centauri. "The treaty before us today creates more than peace," President Warren began. "It establishes a new galactic council where all voices are equal, where transparency replaces secrecy and mutual defense replaces rivalry." Speaker Zovak nodded. "The old council failed because we believed ourselves superior. We looked down on younger species, especially humans. We feared their rapid advancement and tried to contain them. In doing so, we nearly brought about our own extinction." In the audience, Major Karen Hughes sat beside a young Meldari child she had rescued during the liberation of New Centauri. The child's parents had been killed by the Krell, and Hughes had begun adoption proceedings, the first cross-species adoption recognized under the new charter. As the speakers continued, a holographic display activated above the assembly. It showed images from the war, council worlds in flames, refugee ships fleeing destruction, and the combined fleet rising to meet the Krell threat. Then the images shifted to show reconstruction efforts, humans and aliens working side by side to rebuild devastated colonies, joint scientific teams developing new technologies, and the first integrated military training exercises. "Before we sign this historic document," Zovak said, his voice solemn, "we must honor those who cannot be with us today." The lights dimmed, and thousands of names scrolled across the display, human and alien casualties who had given their lives during the conflict. A moment of silence fell over the assembly. When the lights returned, President Warren and Speaker Zovak signed the treaty. As they shook hands, applause erupted throughout the hall. Later, at the reception, Admiral Moore found himself face to face with Zovak. The council speaker had aged visibly during the war, his once vibrant blue skin now pale. "Admiral," Zovak said quietly, "I have been meaning to tell you something. Your decision to leave the peace talks that day, it was the best thing that could have happened to us." Moore raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "It forced us to confront our own failures. Perhaps it took nearly losing everything for us to recognize our greatest allies." Zovak extended his hand in the human gesture he had learned. "On behalf of all council species, I thank you." Moore accepted the handshake. The true test of an alliance isn't how it begins, but how it endures. As night fell on New Earth Station, the combined fleet performed a ceremonial flyby, human and alien vessels, in perfect formation. Below, watching from the observation deck, the architect of the new galactic order, Ambassador Foster, allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that was exactly as it should be. 5 years after the signing of the Galactic Charter, the Orion Diplomatic Academy opened its doors on neutral territory at the edge of former Krell space. Built as a symbol of the new era, its architecture blended styles from all major galactic civilizations. Dr. Ellen Rogers walked through the Academy's main hall, pausing to admire the memorial wall, where images of key figures from the conflict were displayed. Her own face looked back at her, though few knew that Lisa Grant, the intelligence officer who had risked everything to transmit Council secrets, was her former cover identity. "Still feels strange to see yourself there?" asked a familiar voice. Ellen turned to find Admiral Frank Moore approaching, now silver-haired but still carrying himself with military precision. He had retired from active service last year, but remained an influential advisor to the Joint Defense Council. "I was just doing my job," Ellen replied with a small smile. "Unlike you, Admiral Legendary." Moore laughed. "The students still calling me that? I'll have to speak with the faculty about proper respect." Together, they continued toward the central auditorium, where today's graduation ceremony would take place. This was the Academy's first graduating class. 300 students from 27 different species, all trained in diplomatic protocol, cultural understanding, and conflict resolution. "I never thought I'd live to see this," Moore admitted. "Humans and Council species sending their brightest young people to learn together." Ellen nodded. "The integration hasn't always been easy. Old prejudices die hard." "But they do die," Moore said. "That's what matters." The auditorium was already filling with families and dignitaries from across the galaxy. At the front row, Captain Ben Lawson sat beside Commander Vrel, both now instructors at the Academy. Their joint class on tactical cooperation during the Krell War had become the most popular elective. President Warren and Speaker Jovac arrived together, causing a stir among the attendees. Their friendship had become symbolic of the new relationship between Earth and the Reformed Council. As the ceremony began, Ambassador Nicole Foster took the podium. After leading the treaty negotiations, she had been unanimously selected as the Academy's first director. "Distinguished guests, families, and graduates," she began. 5 years ago, many believed this galaxy was too divided to heal. That species who had once been enemies could never truly become allies. She gestured to the graduates seated before her. "Today, you proved that belief wrong. You represent the first generation of what we hope will be many, trained not just in the politics of your own worlds, but in the art of true galactic citizenship." In the third row, Major Karen Hughes, now Colonel Hughes, sat with her adopted Meldari daughter, Lyra. The young alien, now 12 years old, had adapted well to life on Earth, though her blue skin and large eyes still drew curious looks in smaller communities. "Mom," Lyra whispered, "do you think I could study here someday?" Hughes squeezed her daughter's hand. "If that's what you want, absolutely." After the formal speeches, the graduates received their commissions. Each wore a uniform representing their homeworld, with the new Galactic Council insignia displayed prominently. Last to receive her commission was Valerie Cooper, Earth's highest-ranking graduate. As she accepted her credentials from Ambassador Foster, a small commotion erupted at the back of the hall. A group of Krell representatives entered, the first to visit the Academy since its founding. Their presence caused a moment of tension until Speaker Jovac rose and formally welcomed them. "Even former enemies must find a path forward," he said. "That is the purpose of this Academy." Later, at the reception, Admiral Moore found himself standing beside one of the Krell delegates. "You commanded the fleet that defeated us at Krell Prime," the alien said, its translator converting the harsh clicks into smooth English. Moore nodded cautiously. "I did." "You showed mercy when victory was yours," the Krell continued. "Our histories now teach this as the moment when Krell destiny changed." As the evening ended, Ellen Rogers watched the diverse crowd from a quiet corner. Former enemies conversed, different species laughed together, and young graduates spoke excitedly about their future assignments. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted when the humans withdrew from those ill-fated peace talks years ago. Sometimes, she thought, Walking away was the first step toward a better path forward.